temporary federal spending bill for this fiscal year, funding the federal government through April the 8th, cutting about $6 billion from current levels, rather. And the last temporary spending bill, as you may recall, runs out this Friday. So action today in the U.S. House. They're coming in now, and live coverage begins here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Coughlin.
Lord God, our hope and our salvation, 40 years is hardly a lifetime anymore. Yet your people wandered in the desert until a whole generation passed, longing for your promises to be fulfilled. Now, 40 days seems far longer than a month's time. Yet both Moses and Jesus withdrew from the people just that long to seek your face on the holy mountain. Be with this nation and the members of this House as long as it takes, Lord. Allow your people to repent and reflect on old patterns that have brought about present crisis. Grant them your power to seek new patterns of behavior so free people will embrace laws with accountability, and security will spontaneously give rise to self-discipline. Lord, heal our wounded nature and bring us to the fullness of life you have promised, both now and forever. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the previous day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, I demand a vote on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal.
The questions on the Speaker's approval of the journal. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, the ayes have it, and the journal stands approved.
Mr. Speaker, I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present and make a point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from California, Mr. Baca.
Members, stand and salute the flag with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 15 one-minute requests on each side. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, they cry, peace, peace, peace in the daylight, but when darkness of the night comes, they murder the innocent. Such was the case over the weekend when suspected Palestinian radicals killed 5 Israeli members of the Fogel family living in the West Bank. The assassins slithered into the Fogel home and murdered Yudi and his wife, Ruth, and brutally butchered 3 of their children, ages 11, 4, and 3 months. These homicides are an act of terror against the Jews of Israel. They appear to be political murders by radicals who preach hate in the name of religion. Baby killers of any religion or political belief are the lowest forms of the human existence. Israel has the absolute right to exist, but those that have the blood of babies on their hands refuse to let Israel exist. The murder of the Fogel family is yet another example that Israel cannot have peace as long as their neighbors hypocritically preach peace in the daytime and practice murder in the nighttime. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, we've just seen 12 straight months of private sector jobs growth, and there are 2 years low in unemployment rate. And now is the time for us to give our economy another push forward with a smart budget, and I state with a smart budget that invests in critical needs and lowers the deficit with intelligent spending cuts. But instead, what are we giving the American people? More uncertainty with another short-term extension. This short-term continuation resolution must stop. The American people need jobs, not misguided plans that undermine the future of our nation. Unfortunately, the Republican-passed budget would give pink slips to 7,000 American workers. And now, with the continued assault on mortgage relief programs, the Republicans are already ready to start handing out foreclosure notices too. Let's stop this madness. Let's work together on a budget plan that creates jobs, reduces the deficit, and keeps our families in their homes.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise? Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, with a $14 trillion national debt, a $1.65 trillion deficit this year alone, our federal government is facing a fiscal crisis of unprecedented proportions. With the passage of H.R. 1, House Republicans took an important first step toward turning our national government back in the direction of fiscal discipline, defunding Obamacare, and even restoring the sanctity of life to the center of the federal budget. But it was rejected by liberals in the Senate. In fact, last week, the Senate Majority Leader called the Republican budget cuts mean-spirited, reckless, and irresponsible, even defending federal funding for a cowboy poetry festival. Seriously. Is it reckless and irresponsible to ask for $61 billion in cuts when the national debt is 230 times that size? The truth is, they just don't get it. I think it's time to take a stand for taxpayers and for future generations. And I will not vote for the short-term continuing resolution that is coming to the floor of the House today to make that statement. Things don't change in Washington until they have to.
Expired.
It's time to pick a fight.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Without objection, so ordered. Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, as we continue to make our way through the budget process, we must ensure that all funding reductions we make are done in a responsible manner. While I strongly agree that we need to get our deficit under control, we cannot do it in a way that undermines public safety and job creation. For example, the Republican long-term CR will cut $88 million in funding from the Food Safety and Inspection Service. This little-known cut will force food safety inspectors off the job for over 30 days, resulting in shutdowns of plants across this nation. The USDA has estimated that such cuts will result in $11 billion loss in productivity. Additionally, meat, poultry production is supposed to grow over the next year. If we decrease funding for food safety, there will be fewer inspectors to examine our food and make sure it's acceptable for consumption. Mr. Speaker, this is just one example of how we need to dissect each cut and the impact that it will have in the real world. I hope this chamber can come together and make sensible decisions when it comes to reducing our deficit. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
To address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend.
Without objection, so ordered. Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Since the time President Obama took office in 2009, the price of gasoline has more than doubled from $1.53 to a gallon to $3.52. America has become more dependent on foreign oil, undermining our national security while forcing hard-working Americans to endure budget-busting gasoline prices. When you fill up your car, it's not the oil companies you should be blaming, it's the White House. Excessive government regulation, the fact that offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico is all but shut down, an attempt to end the tax incentives for oil exploration are all factors. The culture of no from the executive branch is killing us. Add to that the lack of any action in light of the deteriorating situation in the Middle East, Egypt and Libya in particular, and we have a failure in leadership at the top of this country. Energy is key to our economy. Scores of jobs rely on it. $3.50 gasoline is unacceptable. I call on the President to act today. Call off the EPA. Issue those leases and permits in the Gulf. Open America's land for drilling and quit demonizing the oil and gas industry.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Vermont rise?
To address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. To my Republican colleagues, when you say that we have a fiscal house to get in order, you're right. But when your plan is to focus 100% of your firepower on 12% of the budget, I say you are designing a plan that will fail. Why is it that we have added $700 billion to the deficit by extending tax cuts for the top 2%? Why is it that we'll cut low-income heating assistance by $2.5 billion and continue $55 billion in tax breaks for oil companies that are selling oil at $100 a barrel, and they made $1 trillion in the past 10 years? And why is it that we're now having a threat by the Republican majority to say no on extending the debt limit and to have America default on paying its bills for past obligations incurred under Republican and Democratic administrations, and play with fire with the reputation of the American people, despite the clear damage that will do to the economy, rather than acknowledge that we have an obligation to meet our obligations?
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii rise? Without objection, so ordered. The gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the people of America are asking us, what are we doing? We're going to vote today on another continuing resolution that extends for another couple of weeks. And they're saying, what's the matter with all of you? Why can't you just get it done? And you know, they're absolutely right. Mr. Speaker, the attitude of so be it cannot continue. Yes, we all understand that there is a deficit. We all want to work to stop that. But we also realize that you just simply can't cut. You have to do it smart. You've got to do smart cuts so it doesn't hurt what we're all striving for, which is the creation of jobs. People want jobs, and they want us to get this House in order. You know, if you don't want to listen to us, Mr. Speaker, think about the military. Both sides of the aisles have always looked upon the military as something we share in common. And they're saying a continuing resolution does not work.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
Thank you.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
For permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And had an opportunity to listen to two of my friends on the Republican side of the aisle, and I just need to remind them, you know, when you take a voluntary pay cut and you subsidize and give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires, and then you prosecute a couple wars to the tune of $1 trillion that you don't pay for, and then you let Wall Street run amok without any police on Wall Street, and you have a crash, you're going to have a major debt. So now they're complaining about a debt that they were instrumental in creating. All right, we got to pay it, but you got to get people back to work. The best way to reduce the deficit is to have people working. And when you make the cuts, you know, President Obama has reduced what we're spending in Iraq by $100 billion. That's real money. Can't just focus on education. You can't just focus on energy efficiency. You got to focus on tax cuts for oil companies, tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. It's both sides of the ledger. It takes all of us working together to get this under control, and we Democrats intend to do that. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, soaring gas prices are impacting Americans all over the country. With gas costing nearly $4 a gallon, drivers are forced to rethink how they get around. With families and businesses tightening their budgets, rising gas prices are exactly what they don't need, exactly when they don't need it. That's why I'm calling on the IRS to increase the gas mileage deduction like it did in 2005 and 2008 to ease the pain at the pump for taxpayers. Taxpayers want, need, and deserve this fair and simple and common sense solution for us to tap America's homegrown energy resources right here, right now. Call the White House. The number's 202-456-1414. Tell them to get with it. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a sad duty to honor the life and service of Private First Class David Richard Fahey, Jr., who was killed in the service of our nation. He was born only 23 years ago in Norwalk, Connecticut. On February 28th, his life was taken from us in Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. I never had the honor of meeting David Fahey, but I've read the remembrances of his family and friends as they mourn his passing and celebrate his life. I learned that he was a young man blessed with a singular sense of humor. David was always ready to cheer up others with a joke or a prank. And I learned that he was a man of faith who would spend hours comforting friends in need. David Fahey was a man who put the needs of others first, so it's no surprise that he chose to serve his country as a soldier and MP. Today, on behalf of the people of Connecticut and the nation, I thank PFC David Richard Fahey, Jr., and I offer our perpetual gratitude for his legacy of service and commitment to the defense of all that we cherish. Yield back.
Yields back. Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida rise? Without objection, the gentlewoman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise with my colleagues to talk again about jobs. In order to reduce the deficit in our nation, everyone in the nation must work. But how can you work when you don't have a job? My constituents want to work. They are still hurting. Maybe we can't feel the hurt because we have a job. I'm still waiting to hear a Republican plan for jobs. When are we going to help the people become whole again? They are losing their homes. Whole families are homeless, not knowing what to do next. Their unemployment benefits have expired, and still they can't find work. Right now, over 50% of homeowners in the Miami housing market either owe more on their mortgage than their home is worth, or within 5% of that mark. Instead of figuring out ways to help, tomorrow Congress will be voting on whether or not to end programs that offer hope to distressed homeowners. We talk about a deficit that took 8 years to create during the Bush administration. It took us more than 2 years. It will take us more than 2 years to peel it away. That was 8 years of bad judgment.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentlewoman yields back.
Jobs, jobs, jobs. Stay on task. Jobs, jobs,
Gentlewoman will suspend. What purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 167 and ask for its immediate consideration.
Will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 17, House Resolution 167, resolved that upon the adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 48, making further continuing appropriations for fiscal year 2011 and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the joint resolution are waived. The joint resolution shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the joint resolution are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the joint resolution to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations, and 2, 1 motion to recommit.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, for the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my friend, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which time I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time is yielded for the purposes of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I also ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, House Resolution 167 provides a closed rule for consideration of H.J. Res. 48. Keeping in line with the actions of the minority party and its CRs last year, this rule also provides for 1 hour of debate and a motion to recommit. We're here again today dealing with a continuing resolution, Mr. Speaker, because H.R. 1 sits idly on the Senate side. As you will recall, H.R. 1 has been the singly most debated piece of legislation that we've had in this body this year. In fact, we considered more amendments on that spending bill in February than all of the previous spending bills in the last 2 Congresses combined. And yet, even as the House has worked its will, even as I think we on both sides of the aisle identify that as one of the finest hours of this body, it sits in the Senate, unused, unexamined, undebated. Mr. Speaker, we're in the middle of a debate on spending. It's not that we tax too little in this country, it's that we spend too much. We're operating with $1.4 trillion annual operating deficits, $1.5 trillion, $1.6 trillion. And now they're saying next year it could be $1.7 trillion. Spending that we do with money that we don't have. we need to get to the big picture, Mr. Speaker. We need to have this debate about how do we move beyond what was last year's business and get on to what's this year's business. These things that we're working on, this 3-week CR, Mr. Speaker, this is not the real business. The real business is yet to come. I sit on the Budget Committee. If you want to talk about real business, look at the tough decisions that are coming down the pipe from the Budget Committee. Look at what it's going to take to get this budget back in balance. Look at what it's going to take to restore integrity to our fiscal system. Look at what it's going to take to inspire confidence in our foreign creditors. These are the real issues that we have to discuss, but we can't discuss them, Mr. Speaker, because we are still working on last year's business. Now, I think we're frustrated on both sides of the aisle that we're still working on last year's business, and candidly, it may come as a surprise to you, Mr. Speaker, but I don't blame a soul on the other side. The other side of this body has been our partner in moving H.R. 1 to the Senate. They've been our partner in making the tough decisions that had to be had, and we had Republican amendments that succeeded and Republican amendments that failed. We had Democratic amendments that succeeded and Democratic amendments that failed, and this body worked its will. But the Senate has yet to take up the legislation. Has yet to take up legislation passed in February, has yet to be taken up here as we sit here in the middle of March. Now, I don't know how in the world we have a negotiation, Mr. Speaker. We have done our work here at the House, and I'm proud not only that we did it, but I'm proud of the way in which we did it. But now we wait on the Senate to come to the table and lay down its vision for how we fund this government through September of this year. We continue to wait, and hopefully these 3 weeks, Mr. Speaker, will provide the time needed for the Senate to gear up and get going. Because I'll say it over and over and over again today, this is last year's business, and it is distracting us from the important business that needs to happen. I'll tell you this CR for 3 weeks isn't what I would have liked to have seen. What I'd like to see is H.R. 1 come back to this floor. What I'd like to see is H.R. 1 go to the President's desk. What I would like to see are the tough decisions that we made and the difficult discussions that we had on this floor be translated into the law of the land as it sits on the President's desk and receives his signature. But we cannot move to that point until the Senate acts. So I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to support this rule that will bring to the floor a continuing resolution that will give the Senate 3 more weeks to get its House in order, to do the business that the American people sent the Senate here to do, to join us in doing the good work that we have done, and to move a bill to the President's desk so that we can get on to the rest of the business that the country has laid before us. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to claim my time. I want to thank the gentleman from Georgia for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, here we go again, considering yet another short-term continuing resolution. The last CR was for 2 weeks. This is a 3-week bill. So I guess the good news is that we're heading in the right direction. But that's about the only good news, Mr. Speaker. This is no way to run a budget process. It is no way to run a government. It's like water torture, drip, drip, drip. How are governors and mayors and city councils supposed to plan if we keep passing these short-term bills? How are the financial markets supposed to have any certainty if we're passing bills that go only for 2 weeks or 3 weeks? We all know what needs to happen. Democrats and Republicans in the House, the Senate, and the White House need to get together and figure out a sensible bipartisan solution to this year's budget. And while it may, be convenient to blame the Senate, I should remind my colleagues here that the majority leader in the Senate tried to bring up a bill, but the Republicans voted to not allow the bill to be considered. So it's not like there aren't alternatives out there. The time for rhetoric, Mr. Speaker, is past. The time for press releases and posturing is over. The time for finger-pointing must end. Because despite what some on the other side of the aisle seem to believe, a government shutdown is not in our nation's best interest. I look at today's Politico, and one of the leading Republican spokesmen, Representative Steve King, is quoted extensively in an article saying that defunding is worth a shutdown. I think the last thing the American people want is for us to shut down the government. Because, Mr. Speaker, I suppose we should also be grateful that the bill before us today does not include some of the policy changes that were in H.R. 1. such as blocking money for health care reform and Planned Parenthood, which they voted to eliminate in H.R. 1. H.R. 1, Mr. Speaker, took a meat axe to border security, to food safety, low-income heating assistance, medical research, and I could go on and on and on. And thankfully, the Senate rejected that approach last week. But make no mistake, H.R. 1 is what my Republican colleagues not only want, but are demanding. Their ideological and rigid loyalty to H.R. 1 is what is holding up these negotiations. And the cuts in H.R. 1, Mr. Speaker, are not only egregious, but they are reckless and they are damaging. According to former John McCain economic advisor Mark Zandi, the bill had the potential to lead to 700,000 lost jobs, exactly the wrong prescription for our recovering economy. And speaking of jobs, Mr. Speaker, where are the Republican jobs bills? Where is the legislation to encourage investment in new technologies, in infrastructure, in education, and in medical research? It's been 11 weeks, and we have seen nothing, not a thing from the other side of the aisle on jobs. Let me remind my colleagues that if you truly want to achieve deficit reduction, focus on job creation, put people back to work. We can help grow out of this deficit that we have. Mr. Speaker, we can and we must do better. And I urge my colleagues to oppose this closed rule. I remind my colleagues that we have yet to have a truly open rule in this House. This is a closed rule. Oppose the closed rule and oppose the underlying legislation. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds just to say that we brought H.R. 1 to the floor under the single most open process this House has seen in 4 years. Now, I've only been on the job 65 days. The single most open process that this House has seen in 4 years, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what we did together. Are there other alternatives out there to H.R. 1? I don't know, Mr. Speaker, because I hadn't seen one. Hadn't seen one come back from the Senate. Is the Senate over there debating things? Absolutely. Are they passing things? No, they're not. And I don't know where we go to move forward with that. But a gentleman who might, Mr. Speaker, is my good friend, the president of the freshman class from the great state of Georgia, and I yield to Mr. Scott 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to my colleague from Georgia, I want to thank you for your lead on this and for sharing your time with me. Mr. Speaker, this past November, the American people sent a clear message that they want and demand that representatives in Washington get our fiscal house in order. In fact, our very livelihoods as Americans and that of our future generations depend on it. Now, Americans understand, and we as Republicans understand, that we cannot eliminate this deficit with one piece of legislation. But they do expect Congress to work continuously to reduce spending, excessive spending, in all areas of the government. Mr. Speaker, last week it was announced that February's deficit reached a record $223 billion. The House's continuing resolution simply cut $100 billion. Approximately 2 weeks' worth of February's deficit, and yet the Democrats refer to that as reckless cuts. 2 weeks' worth of February's deficit that we attempted to reduce. Today I ask my colleagues to join me in voting for this continuing resolution, which will once again reduce the federal budget deficit, this time by $6 billion. No, it's not enough, but it is a step in the right direction. House Republicans recognize that we need to do more to reduce the deficit. We also know that the country expects the President and Senator Reid to accept their responsibility for this fiscal reality that they have helped create and to work with the House as a whole to reduce this deficit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I think all of us are dedicated to eliminating excessive spending wherever it may exist. The problem with H.R. 1 and the Republican approach is that all the tough choices and all the burden falls on the middle class and on the poor in this country. Fact is that Donald Trump got his tax cut. We didn't touch that. Big oil companies continue to get taxpayer subsidies. They wrote H.R. 1 in such a way so we couldn't get at those subsidies. Big agribusiness continues to get its subsidies. And I could go on and on and on. No bid contracts and the Defense Department. You know, all those special interests were protected. But we cut LIHEAP. They cut LIHEAP to help people heat their homes in this winter. They go after the National Institutes of Health. You want to find a way to make Medicaid find a cure to Alzheimer's disease. You don't find a cure by cutting monies to the National Institutes of Health. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to follow up on what my friend from Massachusetts said when he was talking about the cuts in H.R. 1 to research and development. We find in New Jersey, which is the third largest state in the country for health care research and development, that every time the federal government spends $1, it creates 5 or 6 or 7 private sector jobs. See, that's the problem here. The Republicans are not focusing on the issue, which is job creation. The problem with their continuing resolution, the long-term one that they adopted and they say that we should just pass in the Senate and send to the President, is it actually destroys jobs. If you listen to the things that are actually being cut, these are the things that deal with investments in the future, R&D, research and development, infrastructure that allows commerce and allows us to fix our roads and provide for mass transit and fix our ports. The gentleman from Massachusetts mentioned Peter King from New York, who actually criticized H.R. 1 because he says that it really hurts port security. Well, how are we going to trade? How are we going to export products if we don't deepen our ports, if we don't provide for safe ports? And the same thing is true with education. H.R. 1 basically cuts back on education, on Pell Grants for students to go to college. All the investments that make sense because they actually create jobs are going to be eliminated with H.R. 1 with this Republican resolution. I mean, it is extremely short-sighted. Now, I mean, I feel like I was here 2 weeks ago with the same people, my colleague from Georgia on the Republican side. I mean, we just can't continue to go 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. You're actually going to go out of session and have a vacation or a break next week. Well, if you're really serious about this, because we know that the Senate basically couldn't get cloture on H.R. 1, why don't you spend next week, instead of going home, and just spend the time here trying to work out something responsibly with the Senate so we can keep the government going? I mean, that's what we need to do. We need a consensus. You have one point of view on the Republican side. The Democrats have another point of view. We have a Democratic president. We're never going to get through this budget year unless we actually sit down and have some consensus and some compromise. What I hear my colleague from Georgia saying is take it or leave it. You know, we voted on H.R. 1. That's our Republican bill. It has all the cuts. The Democrats don't like it because we believe it's strongly going to kill jobs. But you say take it or leave it. It can't operate that way. I don't believe that our constituents in November expected us to just come down here and say, take it or leave it. They want us to go to work. They don't want us to take next week off, and they want us to create jobs. And right now, the uncertainty with these 2 or 3 week short-term spending bills is creating a lot of havoc. I think eventually it's going to create havoc on the financial markets. It's already creating havoc within the federal agencies because they don't know, whether they're going to be operating from 1 week to the next. It is not good for the country. It's not good for the economy. You may disagree, but we need to work together.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. For what purpose is gentleman from Georgia is recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to say to the gentleman from New Jersey that I just couldn't agree with him more. I just couldn't agree with him more. I mean, the House spoke. It wasn't Republicans that spoke. It wasn't Democrats that spoke. The House spoke with H.R. 1. And we need to get to the negotiating table now. I don't know when the Senate's going to act. And I hope the Senate acts today. And I'll stay here just as long as it takes to work through those things with the Senate. But we can't do it alone as much as we'd like to. As much as we'd like to do it alone, we can't, and we're being held at bay by a Senate that refuses to move something forward. I think all of the gentleman's words would be useful to our friends on the Senate side.
Gentleman's time has expired.
And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm tremendously proud to yield 2 minutes to my good friend and a great American patriot, the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Steve King.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Georgia. I tend to agree with all the Republicans from Georgia. And I'm here on the floor to speak to this issue of what frames this rule and the continuing resolution that flows behind it, Mr. Speaker. And I'd remind the American people, I'm here to talk about Obamacare, about cutting off the funding to Obamacare and keeping our pledge We have 87 new freshman Republicans here in the House of Representatives. I believe all of them ran on the repeal of Obamacare. I know all of them voted to repeal Obamacare. And I know this House has the authority to cut off the funding to Obamacare. We passed H.R. 2 to repeal. Every Senate Republican voted to repeal Obamacare. And H.R. 1 was the will of the House. We stood here and we debated over 90 hours, and the components of that affect the policy of this country within the rule of H.R. 1 are not part of the negotiations of this CR. Not the 2-week CR that passed that we're operating on now, and not the 3-week CR that's the subject of this rule that we're debating here, Mr. Speaker. And so I lament that we don't have the will of the House reflected in this CR, and it is trying the patience of at least the Republicans in this House. A growing number have said that they're not willing to vote for another temporary spending measure in order to bridge it over until we get some kind of resolution. But the House can draw the line. There's not a dime that can be spent by this federal government without the approval of the House. And my position that was reflected by the gentleman from Massachusetts is this: I'm willing to face the President, because if we're not willing to face the President, he will get exactly everything he's willing to fight for. That means we have to confront the idea of the President eventually shutting the government down or giving what he wants. And it's more important that we stand on the Constitution and fiscal responsibility than it is to hand over to the President of the United States, who has the audacity to send us a budget with a $1.65 trillion deficit, and that level of irresponsibility to just capitulate to his demands. We must shut off the funding to Obamacare, and I'm ready to do that, and I'll vote no on the bill, but not the rule. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker,
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I yield myself such time as may concern. Well, there you have it. That's the difference between Democrats and Republicans in terms of how we approach this issue. They want to shut the government down. I mean, you know, what happens to Social Security checks and veterans benefits and national parks, and I go on and on and on. I mean, there are consequences to being so rigid and being so ideological. And I'm going to say to my colleague from Georgia, he said H.R. 1 was not the will of the Republicans. The House spoke. The House didn't speak. 3 Democrats voted for H.R. 1. We have 192 Democrats in the House. This was not the House speaking. It was what the Republicans wanted. And so the H.R. 1 is wholly owned by my friends on the Republican side. And I again will say that that bill represents some of the most reckless and heartless cuts that I have seen since I've come to Congress. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to say reckless and heartless is exactly the debate that we're going to have. Is it reckless to pass on $14 trillion in debts to our children with no end in sight? And I would say to you that it is. Is it heartless to saddle our children with that burden that's going to drain their economy dry? And I would say to you that it is. Is it reckless to treat the world credit markets as if they will forever feed our voracious appetite? And I say to you that it is. We have to take these steps today. Mr. Speaker, with that, I yield 2 minutes to my good friend, a colleague on the Rules Committee, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Nugent.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I appreciate, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate that from my good friend from Georgia. Today I rise in support of House Res 167 and the underlying Resolution 48. This resolution provides us with a rule that we can consider a bill that continues to fund the federal government for the next 3 weeks. I want to thank the Appropriations Committee for the hard work they've done and their ability to compromise. I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle can follow their example. Although I support this continuing resolution, and I hope my colleagues will support it as well, I don't want to keep coming back to this issue every 2 or 3 weeks. Funding the government a few weeks at a time is unacceptable. Although my fellow freshmen and I have been here for over 2 months now, we're still cleaning up the mess that was left behind by the previous Congress. As I see it, they've kept kicking the can down the road, refusing to make hard decisions as it relates to spending. Now it's up to us to say, enough's enough, Mr. Speaker, with the out-of-control spending. The House has been at the table for 2 months, We're offering solutions. The Senate and the President have been sitting on the sidelines offering none. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I consume. What is reckless and heartless about H.R. 1 is that it attempts to balance the budget on the most vulnerable in our country, making deep cuts in the low-income energy fuel assistance program to help keep people warm in the wintertime, cutting WIC, the Women, Infants, and Children program, to help keep pregnant women healthy so they can deliver healthy babies, which, by the way, in the long run saves us money. What is heartless and reckless are the cuts in nutrition programs in the National Institutes of Health. I mean, medical research, trying to find cures to diabetes and Alzheimer's, and cancer. And what's protected are taxpayer subsidies for oil companies. What's protected is Donald Trump's tax cut. What's protected is, our subsidies to big agribusinesses. And what's not even talked about is the fact that we are fighting 2 wars and we're not paying for it. I mean, everybody wants to go to war in this chamber, but no one wants to pay for it. It is wrong and unconscionable, and that is adding considerably to our deficit. And what's also adding to our deficit are tax cuts that are not paid for. So, what's heartless about H.R. 1 is that it goes after the people who need government the most, and it leaves people who don't need any government or taxpayer subsidies alone. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
The gentleman is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks. Thank you.
Without objection.
I thank the Speaker. I thank my friend from Massachusetts for yielding, and our friend from Georgia for managing the debate. There are 15 million unemployed Americans as we meet this afternoon, and this is the 11th consecutive week that the majority has not brought to the floor a bill for us to work together to create an environment where small businesses and entrepreneurs could create jobs for our country. Now, I do agree with the proposition that one of the ways that we could have jobs created by small businesses and entrepreneurs is to improve the country's fiscal standing and give us low long-term interest rates in the long run, and reducing our deficit is a key part of doing that. So I think the issue is not if we reduce spending, it's how we reduce spending. And I do think we should stop spending money to the Brazilian Cotton Institute. I think we shouldn't spend $1.5 billion for the police department in Baghdad when American cities are laying police officers off around our country. And I certainly don't think we should be giving $40 billion in subsidies to the oil companies that made $77 billion in profit last year and are raising gasoline to $4 or $5 at the pump. So I think those are areas we ought to agree on and get this budget done. But 11 consecutive weeks without a bill that helps small businesses and entrepreneurs create jobs is 11 weeks too many. I do, however, Mr. Speaker, want to compliment the majority on a good decision I think they've made in this bill. There's an argument in this country about whether to repeal the health care bill or not. We think that would be a surrender to the insurance industry and hurt the American people, and we're against that repeal. And there's an argument in this country about whether Planned Parenthood should continue to get funding for women's health services. Most of us think it should, and many on the other side think it should not. These are legitimate debates. They are not debates that should result in a shutdown of the federal government, however. The right thing to do is to agree on the budget and then agree to disagree on repealing the health care bill and funding for Planned Parenthood later down the road. And I would commend the chairman of the Appropriations Committee and the chairman of the Rules Committee for putting on the floor this afternoon an extension that does not defund the health care bill, that leaves it in place, and an extension that does not defund Planned Parenthood, that leaves the funding for that in place. I think that's the result that we should have in the long run. I think the budget that we adopt between now and September 30th should continue to fund the health care bill as this bill does, and should continue to fund Planned Parenthood as this bill does. But I commend the majority for its decision to leave those issues out of this bill
so that the issue of a government shutdown is, I would ask for an additional minute.
I yield the gentleman an additional minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank the Speaker and I thank my friends so that these issues are not wrapped up in this. Look, there's a significant national debate about whether insurance companies should be able to deny someone health coverage because they have leukemia or diabetes. We think they shouldn't be able to do that because of pre-existing conditions. Others disagree with us. We think that if a young woman needs counseling and services on her gynecological health, that there should be a Planned Parenthood clinic available to her. Others disagree with that, and we respect that debate. But to tie up the operation of the Marine Corps and the FBI and the other aspects of this government over those social policy disputes is a big mistake. It's a mistake the majority has avoided in this resolution that's before us today, and I think that's a wise choice. I hope that the majority continues to avoid that choice. Let's agree on a budget that creates the conditions to help small businesses and entrepreneurs put America back to work, and let's leave the political debates out. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask my friend from Massachusetts if he has any remaining speakers.
Well, we had one other speaker, but he's not here, so I'm prepared to close if the gentleman wants me to.
I'll defer to your good judgment.
All right.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of the time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, as I said in the beginning, these little short-term continuing resolutions are no way to run our government. Beyond the social debates that we're having here on a variety of issues, the fact of the matter is that this 2-week, 3-week continuing resolution puts an incredible burden on our local communities and our states and on our federal agencies. They can't proceed with initiatives that they thought they had the money for. They're not sure whether next week we might cut an entire program or the following week we might cut it or sometime down the road. So there's an uncertainty, and that uncertainty is having an adverse impact on our economy, and it's having an adverse impact on economic development all across this country. And so we need to get serious about negotiating a compromise with the Senate and with the White House and get this year's business done. And again, the United States Senate has put a number of offers on the table. The one that Majority Leader Reid put on the table, the Republicans wouldn't let come to the floor. Mr. Speaker, one of my chief concerns about H.R. 1, which is basically the Republican continuing resolution, is that it has created a climate in Washington that makes it unfashionable to worry about the poor and the most vulnerable. Turning our backs on the most vulnerable in our country doesn't make them go away. There is a cost, and all of us pay that cost. We need to get serious about job creation, putting people back to work. That's the way you reduce the deficit. That's where we grow out of this economic crisis that we're in. And yet, here we are in March, and nobody's talking about jobs. I mean, we've talked about everything else, but the Republicans have refused to talk about jobs or bring a jobs bill to the floor. And I would suggest to my Republican friends, rather than this ideological rigidity, this allegiance to this bill, H.R. 1, which is filled with reckless and heartless cuts, I would suggest to my colleagues that they understand that to get a deal here, it requires some compromise. And I think I would urge them to get about that business. I would also echo what Mr. Pallone said earlier. We're going on vacation next week. Rather than a vacation, maybe we should finish the work of this year. Rather than having members go back and go on Codels overseas or go on vacations, let's finish the business of this year. Let's provide some certainty to our mayors and to our city managers, to our city councils and our boards of selectmen all across this country. Let it provide some certainty that some funding that they're depending on will be there. So having said all that, Mr. Speaker, I would urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question. I'd urge them to vote no on this closed rule. And I would also urge them to vote no on the underlying bill. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume to say there are really a number of things that we agree on. across this body. The gentleman from Massachusetts has very strong feelings about paying for the bills that we create today, and I share his passion for that, and I look forward to getting into the business of paying for those bills. What I do know is that we're not paying for the bills today. What I do know is that when I showed up for Congress on January 3rd of this year, that there was no spending plan to get us past March 4th. No spending plan. Just to be clear, showed up as a brand new member of Congress in January to learn that getting about the business means putting together a funding bill before March 4th because the previous Congress didn't take care of business. Now, I know my friend from Massachusetts wasn't in charge of the other side of the aisle last year, and he certainly wasn't in charge of the Senate, although we all wish that we could be in charge of the Senate. But the business didn't get done, and that's why we're here today. That's why we're here today. That's the first reason why we're here today, to take care of business that didn't get done last year. But the second reason, Mr. Speaker, and the more important reason that we're here today, is because we said when we took over this body on January 5th that we would not go along with business as usual. It would have been a nothing to pass a bill that the President would sign that would say, hey, just keep on funding the government the way you've been funding it. Keep on racking up those trillion-dollar deficits the way you've been racking them up. Don't change a thing, fiddle while Rome burns. It would have been easy, except for my conscience, except for the conscience of the folks who were elected with me in November, except for our principles. It would have been easy. We chose the road less traveled that said, no, we're not going to put it off. There's always a reason to wait, Mr. Speaker. There's always a reason to wait, and we said, no, we are going to begin making the tough decisions today. Today. Now, that today was back in February, and we're still waiting on the Senate to get to the table so that we can have some of those negotiations. But I will say to my friend from New Jersey, who was terribly pleased that the riders were not included on this bill, if you think for a minute that I'm done fighting for life, you're mistaken. If you think for a minute that I'm done working to defund Planned Parenthood and its work that it's doing with federal dollars, you're mistaken. If you think for a minute that I've given up on ripping every nickel out of the budget that belongs to Obamacare and the nationalization of our health care system, you were mistaken. And if you think for a minute that I'm going to stop trying to repeal every single one of the job-killing, energy price hiking regulations that the EPA is promulgating across this country, chaining our small businesses down, you were mistaken. That fight might not be today. Today is about cutting $6 billion out of the budget that our children are not going to have to repay. Today is about keeping the government open for 3 more short weeks to give our friends in the Senate a chance to come to the table. But, Mr. Speaker, that day of reckoning is coming. The day of reckoning is coming because these are ideals that deserve the attention of this body. These are decisions that cannot be kicked down the road even further. These are decisions of principle on which compromise is often not an option. Sometimes you just have to take the vote, and somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of this rule. I rise in strong support of the underlying bill. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
The gentleman yields back. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted without objection.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged concurrent resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk will report the concurrent resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 30. Resolved that when the House adjourns on the legislative day of Thursday, March 17, 2011, Friday, March 18, 2011, or Saturday, March 19, 2011, on a motion offered pursuant to this concurrent resolution by its majority leader or his designee. It stand adjourned until 2 p.m. on Tuesday, March 29, 2011, or until the time of any reassembly pursuant to Section 2 of this concurrent resolution, whichever occurs first, and that when the Senate recesses or adjourns on any day from Thursday, March 17, 2011, through Friday, March 25, 2011, on a motion offered pursuant to this concurrent resolution by its majority leader or his designee, it stand recessed or adjourned until noon on Monday, March 28, 2011, or such other time on that day as may be specified in the motion to recess or adjourn, or until the time of any reassembly pursuant to Section 2 of this concurrent resolution, whichever occurs first. Section 2. The Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader of the Senate, or their respective designees, acting jointly after consultation with the Minority Leader of the House and the Minority Leader of the Senate, shall notify the members of the House and the Senate, respectively, to reassemble at such place and time as they may designate if, in their opinion, the public interest shall warrant it.
The question is on the concurrent resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. No. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker?
The concurrent resolution is adopted.
Mr. Speaker?
For what purpose the gentleman from Massachusetts?
We haven't finished our work. I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until approximately 1 p.m.
Well, a bit unexpectedly, the U.S. House goes into recess. They set till 1 p.m., so just a couple of minutes away. When they come back, we expect a couple of votes. One on the rule for the latest short-term spending bill. You saw just about an hour's worth of debate on that, and also a vote on the journal. It's the official written record of yesterday's activity. So 2 votes ahead in the U.S. House. And should that rule pass, an hour of general debate on the latest, the 6th and latest, short-term federal spending bill for fiscal year 2011. This one would carry through 3 weeks through April the 8th and would cut a total of $6 billion from current levels, $2 billion per week. The current temporary spending bill wraps up this Friday, ends this Friday. That's why they've got to get this latest one done, this latest short-term CR or continuing resolution. Again, we expect the House coming back in momentarily. That flag on the top of the Capitol at half-staff and across the city and across the country, too, in honor of Frank Buckles, the last surviving World War I veteran who passed away February 27th. Well, his burial today, the funeral service and burial, is happening at Arlington National Cemetery. And that's expected to get underway later this afternoon, sometime after 4 o'clock. We've been covering that online at cspan.org with a look at the casket of Frank Buckles lying in honor at Arlington National Cemetery. And again, you can follow that online at cspan.org. Again, the U.S. House gavelled out into recess a few minutes ago. They should be back in shortly. They said 1 p.m. Eastern to pick up on the votes for the continuing resolution, the short-term spending measure for fiscal year 2011, a 3-week measure this time. They'll also sometime later today get a vote on the adjournment resolution. That's because the House next week will be out of town, will be in recess and in a work period, a district work period for members. On the spending bill that's coming up today, the Wall Street Journal writes this morning that an increasing number of Republicans say they're losing patience while lawmakers try to reach an agreement on a bill that funds the government until until September 30th, the end of the fiscal year. The Wall Street Journal writes that House Republicans want to cut spending in this year's budget by $61 billion below last year's level, while Democrats have agreed to about $10 billion in cuts. That's the H.R. 1 that passed in the U.S. House back in February.
Resolution 167 by the yeas and nays, and approval of the journal if ordered. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. The remaining electronic vote will be conducted as a 5-minute vote. The unfinished business is the vote on adoption of the House Resolution 167, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar Number